Welcome to Processing Severance, our after-show podcast brought to you by the Hollywood Critics Association. I'm your host, Rasha Goel, joined by my amazing two co-hosts, Rick Hong.
I'm not sorry.
Okay. Where's that coming from? All right, we will talk about that later, Rick.
I
think that's,
Jeff, do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
break room for you. And Jeff Ewing.
I keep trying to quit, but my Audi won't let me.
We're going to have a major therapy session here today. So if you are just joining us for the first time, a reminder that this is an after show. So there will be spoilers. We're going to be breaking down the show for you. And if you haven't seen the episodes, this is episode 4 that we're discussing today, the You Are. I highly suggest you go back, watch the show, and then come back here. Now, the other thing we've been excited about is our audience engagement. So I want to give you our email again. If you have any comments, suggestions, questions, things you want to share or have us mention, you can email us at shows@hollywoodcriticsassociation.com. Make sure you put Severance in the subject line. And of course, always comment on the YouTube. Maybe there's questions you have, or perhaps there's another analysis that you might be able to offer to us. I'm going to give a shout out to Elizabeth K right now, who shared this thought with us. I wonder why Malice Neighborhood never filled up, and I also wonder if the other employees are surveyed in a similar way. For example, are any of them neighbors to Milchick or Mr. Grainer? You know, I did wonder that too, though, like why we're not seeing anybody else in that neighborhood. And again, I wondered if it was because it's through the Lumen company, and if they've just kind of built that little area and just give it to their specific employees. Who have the Innie and Outie worlds.
Yeah, because I did notice, you know, when Petey was around, there was brief mention made in the outside world that they kind of own half the town, basically. So they take up a lot of space. It's a company town. I did really early on wonder why does he get the privilege of having Harmony live next door and stealth pretend to be his neighbor for presumably years.
That was planned.
Yeah, exactly. So why Mark?
Planned or maybe just random, and where we're meeting that in the story just happens to be what's going on right now.
I feel like that was planned because Mark is someone she's always watching out for. Mm-hmm. And then it's interesting, like after Petey, Mark became the supervisor. You know, I think there is definitely a deeper connection there that we don't know about. But yeah, that's just my theory. I guess we'll have to see how that unfolds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, we got five more episodes.
So Elizabeth K, hope we were able to answer your question. Do chime in. I'd love to hear what you thought of our answers. Are we ready, gentlemen, to break down episode 4?
This episode was crazy. Very
crazy. It was directed by F.M. McCardle. So I'm excited to definitely talk about some of the things that we saw in this. Well, let's just get right into it. So we start off with a scene from the break room, and we see Helly, of course, going through that testing. I do want to mention real quick, though, I loved how the episode opened with Helly and it closed with Helly. There was something very poetic about that for me. But I think this scene is really intense, the way it opened. I loved how it was shot. Close-up of the eyes, close-up of the tape, close-up of the machinery. Like, you really are feeling this intense moment. What was going on? Jeff, I'll start with you. What was going on through your mind watching this scene?
I really felt for Helly. Because obviously, from her perspective, it's a nonstop, unyielding, unending, like broken by only the elevator marathon of effectively torture that really, really got to her.
Yeah, it's like you brought it up well, Jeff. It's like torture. It's like the military where sometimes they'll play like loud rock music, just to just drive people crazy so they can't sleep. And like with her too, it's like the lighting, the sound, and then having to keep repeating those words like that alone. Yeah, it's like some crazy other version, like electronic version of doing like Chinese water torture.
Yeah.
But it goes along with the philosophy that I said, last week. It's the Simpsons. I will not do whatever. It's still that child thing, it's just done in a way different, like 2022 way.
Drilling it in her head. I loved how, as we move past that scene, Irving is very concerned about her, and he tries to get Mark to follow up on her. Mm-hmm. But we see Mark, I think, in this episode, really kind of pursuing that curiosity, if I can say the word, that we were discussing in episode 3, right? Mm-hmm. What did so we see them talking about the map that he found, but then he gets so angry with Helly and gets into this confrontation with her that he ends up shredding the map. I was just torn when that happened, and then I thought, I bet there's copies of this map in other places. But I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Oh, I mean, there has to be, because there was already a second version outside Lumen. So there has to be more than one copy, because it has a really intense purpose. I was very disappointed in Mark. I really was.
By shredding it?
Yeah.
The other thing, too, is that we don't really, because we're watching an episode, we don't know how fast he's able to absorb information or, like, looking at it. So, like, he may have already kind of memorized a version of, like, kind of saying, like, okay, this is here. I know this is there. So, like, that might give him a little bit of justification for shredding it.
I feel, too, though, as I've been watching Mark, that he doesn't do well with confrontation, right? Like, he just wants it to quickly move through, and he's very uncomfortable. So I felt like the shredding was his way of responding, maybe that, okay, I don't want to deal with this. Helly's really getting on me. She's trying to, point fingers at me. I'm done with this. I can't handle the pressure of it.
It doesn't help, too, that she keeps saying how much she doesn't like it either. So it's like, you don't like me, so why are you bothering me? Oh, this is the thing. This is the trigger that keeps, like, having you bother me. So, well, let me get rid of it.
I get that. I also think that it underscores, too, like, this episode really underscored the sometimes substantial difference between your innie version and your outie version. And we saw that we saw that with Helly, and we'll get there. I promise we'll get there. But we also see it here with Mark, because on the outie we spend a lot of time there. We understand his pain and his suffering, but also he's a lot more curious in his outie self. He has a lot less purpose, and it kind of causes him to take more risks. Yeah.
And I think also everything that happened with Petey too is still kind of confusing him a little bit, and he's feeling that loss of him not being there in that office.
Well, because he talked about it. He said, Petey was the culture for those guys. He kind of brought the energy level up, or he kind of kept maybe the balance. And now there's no Petey. So, like, I guess maybe, and, they've kind of thrown Mark into that role. And maybe, like, Mark's uncomfortable. He doesn't like having to be, like, that guy. And then on top of it, then you add Helly into it, who's very, like, anti-everything. So she's, like, not really contributing to the piece, contributing to the balance. So I can see why, like, it's like get rid of the sheet. But it is disappointing, man, because I think what we kind of want is for them, like, because it happened a little bit until he shredded it, but we wanted them to kind of all get together.
There was some hope there.
It's like treat it like The Great Escape. Yes. That's what you wanted with that piece, the thing there. Or what you wanted is for them to get caught with it, and get in trouble, to say, like, okay, now, there's like this extra weird contraband that really goes against the rule. So
I wanted to see Helly lead the way there.
Mm-hmm. Right. And I do think that we did get to see a little bit of them breaking the rules and coming together, especially when it comes to them finding a particular piece of literature unexpectedly.
Well, let's talk about that.
Okay.
I know that came in a little bit later. We'll talk about that, and then we'll come back to Burt coming into this space. Sure. So let's talk about this book.
The You Are.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
I was going to get Mr. Milchick, but I thought it best not to break the chain of command.
It's just raining contraband today.
What do you mean?
It doesn't matter. Has anyone seen anything like this before?
Passage 31, page 110. Be content in my words, and dally not in the scholastic pursuits of lesser men.
No books except the handbook, I know.
What are you doing?
His ego's... Helly called him out for bootlegging.
My ego's fine. I'm just trying to...
Damn.
Mark, what is this?
Maybe it's another Petey message. Flip through, see if my name's anywhere.
I bet it's a loyalty test. Remember the spicy candy?
I'll be turning this into Milchick.
What? Why? It's booty. It's booty with your name on it.
Excellent decision, Mark. This is an idolatrous text that should be brought to him immediately.
Right, because it's interesting because they straight up say in the episode that only the handbook, only official company documentation. It's you're working in a cult building. Only cult literature that say this person is like the newly reincarnated god are allowed. Not in Lumen, but in a cult-like building, that's all they want. So the big interesting thing for me is that we can guess at the origin of the book because they took it from Mark's porch, but then...
And then it's written to him as they open up, so it's kind of like, wait, who is delivering you this message? It's not just like they stumbled across something, but the fact that it's like actually like written out to him.
Yeah, it's supposed to be there to him, for him, but they don't know how. And so it creates an interesting sort of almost like a mythos around it where they don't know if it's a test. They don't know what the point is really, so they don't know what to do with it.
I mean, and I think it's hilarious that Milchick is the HR guy. And he's the one that was like sitting there reading it and he got interrupted because of Helly. But the fact that like we haven't seen yet him even like kind of being like, oh, wait a minute. I forgot that book is like in the middle of... And he's HR. Like he's the guy he's the actual screw up in this whole situation.
Mm-hmm. But I think he's too self-consumed with himself and his duties in dealing with Helly. Like Helly has now become kind of a nuance for them and they're concerned. And then of course we're going to talk a little bit more about Petey and what's going on there. So I think for him right now, it's a huge stress level and perhaps even concerns his job in trying to figure out what's happening with Helly and how do we make sure that she kind of fits into that cult.
Or he got too distracted doing that weird Chinese water torture, rock music, Bart Simpson, punishment.
I actually want to go back to that for just 1 second because my initial question watching that scene was, what's wrong with Milchick? Because, okay, it's torture for Helly to do it over 1,000 times. It's torture for anyone, that's literally the point. But he has to sit there and listen to it as Chinese water torture 1,000 times or 1,500 times. And he's just sitting there, do it again, torturing himself. What's up with that guy?
That's his job. He's been programmed and trained, and he's so just addicted to the behavior here and really owns the position that he's in that he follows the rules and he's not going to bend until it's perfectly done. And I guess there's some other consequences that we're not really aware of right now. Maybe those will unfold, but I feel like that's why he's been given a job. He needs to make sure that it's executed to the full.
I mean, same, the way I look at it, it's a little bit of like being a meter maid. They have a job. We all hate meter maids and everything, but they have a job that they have to do. And some, that's just it's like a door guy too. That's just the little bit amount of power that they have over somebody. And like even on that may be the one thing that he actually maybe enjoys. So just to see, because it is the break room. So when will they break, and when does he decide that he believes them, that they are sorry? See, that's why I'm not sorry. But
I don't believe you.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Burt's beautiful entry into the into the space. Dylan is so hostile with him. It's hilarious. Then you see Irving is like this kid who just received a candy bag and is just like super excited. Of course, Mark is just neutral. What did you guys make of that scene? Why is Burt coming from the O&D department? Let's break that scene down a little.
Clearly, Burt and Irv made, I don't know what it is. They've kind of touched on in this episode too, but there's some sort of connection. It's, maybe they're wired the same way in terms of like how they view the culture of Lumen. Maybe it's because they've been talking about the paintings and they always have like their own interpretations. And Burt's older than Irv, at least, I mean, even I'm just going by actor years or like whatever. So it's like maybe like, I guess even down in Lumen being an innie, maybe like you still long for some version of connection. And remember how like they put just the two people in that one division. So it's just like eventually like you're still human. They're still human. So maybe there's boredom or whatever. So he's finally found in like, you know, he is going out of his way. He is going out of his way to go meet Irv. So maybe that's what it is too. It's like a little bit of longing for a connection and just kind of, dude, I'm just sick of working with this one person all day long for how many decades that he's been there.
Well, you know what piqued my curiosity too was that little exchange. So he does this whole thing about bringing the tote bags in, talks to them, and then on the way out, there was that moment where he just whispers and says, "Thank you." And the glances that were exchanged there, it just felt like there was a deeper meaning there for something or something they're seeking.
Yeah, because I feel like Burt felt seen, you know, and understood. And that's very powerful, especially when you don't get a lot of it at Lumen, you know? So it's going to leave an impression. And he was even willing to, you know, we don't know him well enough to know if he's a rule breaker. You know, we don't even know that much about the department other than the reputation that it has. And
those guys are scary guys, man.
O&D,
man.
Oh, there's only two of them because, you know, we couldn't have three.
Yeah.
Three is
just
too much. But he comes down there, too, with a map, you know? When we find out in this episode that it's not that, you know, Petey's not supposed to make a map. No one's supposed to make a map. It's literally sacrilege, and he still makes a map.
So that's really interesting. That leads us into the tour, right? Oh, and that was so funny too. He offers an opportunity for this tour of the O&D department, and Irv just jumps on that and is like, "Okay, I'm going now."
It's like that thing. That's the thing I'm doing.
Right.
I'm going to do that thing.
And he's so set on it. You know what I found very interesting too is just the way that was shot again when we see Irv going down to the department, the white walls, the maze. It just reminded me of like a mouse that was trapped in a maze that was trying to find a way out.
That's what I've been saying. It's kind of like that's the experiment, you know, a little bit of the experiment. I mean, the interesting thing about, okay, this is episode 4 about this episode 2 is that something's like you wanted, Jeff, after episodes 1 and 2, you wanted to see more of a deep dive on Irv himself. We haven't gone to his outie. We don't know if we'll ever go to the outies of the other, you know, characters necessarily. Maybe that's Severance season 2, possibly. But we're starting to go Irv's way too.
Yep. I want an Irv prequel. You heard it here first. But I really like that we got, even if it was kind of subtle, we got a lot more look at Irv, you know, being like a kid again, you know? And he did, you're right to bring up, too, that it was kind of like a mouse in a maze, because even Irv, who literally had a map, got turned around, because it's just designed to be a sort of naturally hostile space, you know, an unfree space. But then Irv and Burt found a little bit of freedom in it.
Yes.
And like when they're together, it's like that hand connection.
Yeah.
So it makes you think even more about kind of like what that meaning is, you know, like what kind of like connection they're looking for with each other. And then it makes you think about, okay, well, if that's happening there, what's happened on the outside world for both those guys too?
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how their outies are and how they live and how that works out. Because they're so invested in this company and really a part of the system.
And that's how they become kind of invested in each other in a way. And we don't know what it means for them. But I did write down when I was going through my notes, like, are they on a date when they're touring the facility? Because it kind of had that first date energy.
It was interesting.
You know, and then there's that conversation where he's like talking about, you know, he's opening up to Burt. He's opening up to Burt saying, you know, yeah, dude, like I'm falling asleep here. So like, I'm wondering what my Audi's doing. Is my Audi just like partying? You know, like outside in the outside world, and that's why, like, whatever. And, you know, and Burt's kind of giving him some comfort, kind of saying, oh, well, it could be this, it could be that, you know, kind of giving his reasonings about his Audi. So they're really, it's beyond, you know, some of the stuff is beyond Lumen and just talking about how they interpret the paintings or the handbooks. Like, they're kind of starting to share some other things too, like about their personal self, or at least Irv is.
Well, and it seems like he's kind of found a friend maybe in Burt too, like the 3 people he works with. There's not that level. It's just that we're sitting on our desk, we're doing the work, we're following the rules. But maybe with Burt, he's able to kind of push the envelope a little bit and find someone that he feels comfortable with and can maybe confide in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's interesting, too, because, like, while they're in the core department, Dylan is probably the closest to Irv, and they're not close at all.
No,
because
man,
both of
those
them,
two, yeah.
Here's the way that he's closest. Both him and Irv can be motivated to toe the company line and do stuff, but for Dylan, he just loves games. He will try and find the closest way, the shortcut, the way to get the prize, the way to have fun if it's not on the agenda, versus Irv feels it in his core.
Yeah.
Those guys, basically, like Dylan and Irv they're frenemies. They're a little like Tom and Jerry. Like sometimes they like each other or whatever, and sometimes it's not there. So
it's fun watching them though. Like
course,
Dylan comes up with the most quirkiest lines. He's just got like these one-liners, but really they steal the scene, and I love it. Just the way he delivers it. Of course, one of the things that does stand out in this episode is Petey's funeral. Mrs. Selvig is, very interested in, because they want the chip from his brain, and they want to make sure that they retrieve that before his burial. So
because we find out I think he's gonna be cremated, right, Jeff? Yeah,
right.
He's
he's
gonna
gonna be cremated.
So.
So that's right. He's gonna be cremated.
There's a narrow window.
Yes.
And I get it. Like by retrieving that thing, it could have information of like how he was able to unsever himself. It starts getting like really crazy because, Harmony, like, I gotta get my people straight here for a second. So Harmony and Mrs. Selvig are, there is no innie and outie. She's just the one person. But Mark, his innie knew Petey. His outie was never really ever supposed to know Petey. So for him to actually like show up there, is like, that's already is kind of like, dude, how, regardless if even if like he knows that, okay, well, Petey used to be an employee. It's like, I mean, who wants to go to I don't, I used to work at companies, and I don't think if I didn't know them, I wouldn't want to go to their funeral.
Exactly. And that's exactly why the family is so dismissive, because they're like, well, then you didn't know him at all.
Really know him.
But my thing is, I would still be like, why are you here?
And that's, I think, why Harmony's so suspicious, even though Mark isn't reintegrated. It is very curious why it would even be relevant to be like, this is a place to be at all.
She's definitely got his eye on him.
Yeah.
I mean, she is watching him like a hawk, because again, we don't see any of the other Lumen employees there, right?
Why would we?
Right. So that does pique her interest as to, well, why is Mark attending this funeral? And I kind of feel like at this point too, we just start seeing a lot of, again, confusion and actually feelings now happening in Mark, where he's questioning what he's feeling and feeling uncomfortable. And maybe that's, bringing up memories of his wife's death.
Yeah, because I feel like watching the wife and daughter mourn, watching that video where they're jamming out to the entire length of Metallica songs.
Enter Sandman.
Great choice of very interesting choice of songs,
Yes.
and the facial expressions, like very, very cleverly done.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm always moved by a really good Enter Sandman rendition. However, watching them grieve to that wonderful memory, I think really started to unlock emotions in him that are confusing, to say the least.
And when we've seen it in the in the episodes and everything, Petey mentioned it to him, dude. When you come, when we see your innie, we see that you're, like you've had like the red eyes and everything else too, or like whatever. So, and then like we saw like even in the opening episode, he's crying in the car before he goes to work.
We see Mark, of course, leaving and then driving down to a tree and showing the connection of the tree. And of course, we assume that that's where an accident happened and maybe the wife died. But I just thought that was really interesting too, because now we're starting to really kind of see a more emotional side to him, because at work we really don't get that. He's following rules. He needs to be the supervisor, needs to tell these people what to do. So I'm kind of like enjoying seeing the layers to Mark, but I don't know. I feel like as we start moving through the episodes, we may see a breakdown from him too that kind of collapses the innie and outie roles. It'll be interesting to see how that happens.
And it's interesting because like how they're playing this out. Which one's going to crack first? Is it because at first you think that it could be outie Mark because he was approached by Petey, but innie Mark by getting that map, You know, it's just like who's gonna crack first? Like, I mean, like the balance, because like I think initially, like I want to say, if we were guessing that it would be like 90-10, 90-10 that the Audi mark is gonna do something, but it's starting to kind of go like not 90-10, but maybe 80-20, 70-30. So like I'm wondering like which version of Mark will crack first, or will they meet each other at 50-50 somehow?
Right, because I mean, I think that's a really good point, because any Mark is getting a lot of challenges right now, because you have Helly constantly pushing him, changing them around the department. He has no idea what to do, and it's every day is worse than the prior day. It's unyielding. And then on top of it, you have the mysterious map, you have his evident frustrations, and then he gets the book that's addressed to him from his Audi self, and he has no idea what to make of it.
You know, I think it's funny too that as one thing disappeared, you know, we were all like, "Oh my God, he shredded the map," or whatever. But as one thing from the outside world disappears, well, I mean, it technically was still in the but this contraband, you know, disappears. All of a sudden, now there's the book. So it's like one contraband leaves, another contraband shows up.
And you know what was interesting too that I noticed in talking, just reflecting off what you're saying, I was going to call you Rick, is that when we see him going into that wellness space, right? She gives him
Miss Casey, Dichen Lachman, yeah.
Mm-hmm. She gives him some clay and she asks him to just create what he's feeling, and he creates a tree. So here's the thing, though, he is now the innie, right, at work, but he's reflecting in that clay something that happened from the Audi. So that's where it's just piquing my curiosity too, as far as the collapsing happening.
I didn't even get that deep about it. I think like, oh wait a minute, like his innie isn't supposed to know about his Audi, but like yet something like that emotion thing shows it up, and and then clearly too we see the candle, the green and red candle. Yeah. So.
And for someone who's watching right now who may refer what the candle was to again?
Yeah, so the candle was like was in Audi Mark's basement that Mrs. Selvig, when she broke and entered and broke all these laws, on top of like drilling, getting a brain chip and drilling into a dead body.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So
ruthless.
So she brings it into that room, into the wellness room. And, we don't see any reaction from him to be like, oh, I had one of those, nothing.
Yeah. Such a great piece of detail, by the way, to notice, Rick.
Absolutely.
Really great piece of detail.
But they really went out of their way, like in the episodes too, to show us and everything, which was great. And like the fact that like it has specific like Christmas colors, or just the fact that it's red and green. I'm sure if it was just like a generic white or something, like I probably wouldn't have been paying attention.
Yeah. I think that one of the interesting things is that we're starting to see that maybe the severance procedure has some weaknesses and they're centered around emotion. That's my hypothesis. We don't know yet. But my guess is that because it separates, your experiential self, it separates your mind, your memories, they're totally cut off from each other. But our emotions are way more primal and embodied and, mirrored throughout every cell of ourselves practically. And so there's something maybe the severance procedure can't fully cut off that starts to come to the fore. And for Mark, all of these pressures on both sides of it are starting to erode that, and his Audi is feeling the emotions of his innie and vice versa to some degree.
Hence, that's why I'm saying like the balance, the balance of like that 90-10, or like, you would think that it's the Audi that's going to try to break into the innie, but like it looks like it's kind of coming to a head of that, where is it going to be? Will they meet at 50-50?
Now, in this episode, were there any lines that stood out to you? Any dialogue lines, or just even something in a scene?
Well, and this is, I guess we can talk about this part because we're saving the Helly juice for the very, very last.
Of course,
but
don't ruin anything, Rick.
Yeah, but what, this is a spoiler. This is a spoiler after
I'll
show.
We've
said it at the top of the hour, so if you're watching, like if you don't want a spoiler, stop now.
Just stop right now.
No, but in the book, the book had a lot of like different philosophies. It's just kind of like you are not your job. It was interesting. How he was talking about. I was content. Like,
this is why I shouldn't have let Rick go, because you just took my line. That was the line that popped out to me too.
Listen, you should have said it. Then why did you ask me? You asked.
Please continue though.
No, but like both to the break room.
But because that's the thing. It's like you don't introduce something. Again, with this show, you don't introduce something, whether it's the candle, whether it's the map, not to use it. And same thing with this book. And you don't have, like, I had to pause it. I actually recommend pausing it just to see if I could get more from the paragraph, and like when they were reading and everything, just see if I get more from that. I really couldn't beyond what they showed us.
Yeah.
But there's that nugget. And so how does that nugget play out for the next couple episodes?
I did the same thing when Dylan was looking at the Destiny poem. And unfortunately we can't see all of it, but I did think it was interesting that is one of the last scenes in the film, and or not in the film, but it's very cinematic in the episode. And so that's one of the elements that really stuck with me and that my brain kept going back to after it was over.
Because could it be that the introduction of this book, this outside contraband, is what causes anarchy? They all kind of start reading it privately together, and then start, granted we're at episode, I guess we're going to be jumping into episode like we're getting ready to be half season, so we still have 5 more episodes to maybe throw a coup. Maybe it's not just about Mark, but it's like these other guys joining with, like this book has them join this anarchy and they break out altogether.
Well, it definitely, I think that is one of the, hypothesis, one of the assumptions that we could look into, because especially that line about your job needs you, not the other way around. I felt like that was a really powerful line.
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting to me because I will go back. It takes me back a little bit. Lumen takes me back to my first and worst job. At one point, I worked, my very first job, I worked at a McDonald's inside of a Walmart. So, in the belly of the beast, in the bowels of hell. It is terrible. And they really try and treat you like an object. So obviously I didn't really, nobody tells me what to do. I didn't enjoy it, and I wasn't very well behaved.
Did they take you to the break room? I'm just curious.
I'm just saying I left Eastern Washington for a reason, and I legally can't go back. That's a lie. But the thing that's interesting is that they really try and, like if there's time to lean, there's time to clean. They try and control the totality of your time there. And leech the personality out of what you do and how you do it, 100% clock in to clock out.
Yeah, they just want you to function there, right? Just
You're
make sure that
a machine.
make sure the fries don't overburn, and just follow the pattern of the assembly line.
Exactly.
The bun, the
Follow the
burger,
recipe.
the pickles, and
Press the buttons.
pushing the ketchup and the mustard. I never worked at a McDonald's, but I imagine that's what it is.
Exactly.
You're just a machine.
Exactly. You're just a machine. And that's
Outputting.
exactly the way that Lumen literally changes the structure of your brain to be. When you're there, you don't. When you're there, you're not family. But they like you to pretend that you are. You're nothing but your work self only. And that's the entire reason why Helly can't stand it.
No emotions. Well, let's talk about Helly, and as we're getting to the,
let's get to the juice.
ending of the show. So another really impactful way of filming this was, I loved how you see like these quick, not necessarily montages, but we start seeing like these quick snippets from each of the characters, right? Like where they're at. You see Helly, of course, with the cord and her moving through the hallway, but at the same time, you're seeing a shot of Mark, you're seeing a shot of Irv, you're seeing Dylan doing his thing. And I thought that was really a clever way, again, to just kind of build up to this climatic ending that we see at the end where, okay, so the big reveal, basically we see Helly in the elevator, and you see her, we assume that she has hung herself. And what I thought was, again, very poetic is, did you notice the elevator light? It was going up. I thought that was kind of interesting too. So they showed as soon as she kicked the trash can, the light was going up.
Interesting. Well, it was cool, like if you rewind too, because like in, like when we're talking about Helly in this episode, she finds out from her outie that, no, I want you there. Like, I want this.
I don't care about you. You're an object.
And I watched, and the cool thing was, too, was like, this is the directing. I was like, I watched the scene, I rewound it, I paused, because I wanted to see, like, how much time took place from her going up in the elevator, and we see the switcheroo of the discs from like the clear plastic to like the blue. And then even I was watching Mark Irving see all their clothes too, just to see like, was it a different day maybe or whatever, even though she's in the same clothing. But so it's the same day like. That she went upstairs and that her outie said, dude, blah, blah, like record it and then send it back down. And so it happened in the same day.
There's something eerie, Rick, about that video too, though. Something very eerie.
So I have a theory that maybe Helly, and hence her name, Helly, did something terrible in the outside world, and she can't forgive herself or get over it. So this is how she punishes herself, and that's why she won't let the innie escape from that hell.
Okay.
Or
maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, we were also theorizing that she might be part of the Lumen family.
That's still kind of where I'm leaning.
You're leaning towards that still?
Because her vibe, so Mark's vibe, innie, outie, he's sadder on the outside because he has the trauma that he remembers, but he's still versions of a similar person. But outie Helly from that video feels differently. Like the performance was really good. She's very cold. She was very like, you are literally nothing. You don't exist. You're an object to me, which brought to mind kind of seeing that experience a whole lot of ethical questions, I think, about how the relationship between outie and any people in this world. But she was cruel, she was no nonsense. I know a version of me is suffering, but I will make you suffer more if you hurt the body.
I will make your life hell.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. It's so smart too. She brings the paper cutter to Harmony. And that's. I was like,
she's brilliant.
Yeah, there's some genius there. It's like, I will do bodily harm.
Yeah.
To get out of this place.
Explain this. Explain the lack of fingers and what have you. Yeah, I remember my notes every time, she holds her fingers hostage. It was tactically...
She's brave.
It's pretty brilliant.
I will say she's brilliant and she's brave. Okay, so now do you guys think we have lost her? Or will we see her survive this situation?
Man, it's like, I would be disappointed. I mean, it's great, but I would be disappointed knowing that we're only at the halfway mark because I was telling people, like I told you guys too, that if you don't kind of like following Mark, Helly was a great character to follow
I love her
too. But all of a sudden, if it's like she's gone, then you're not gonna tune out, people. But she's a great character. Would be a miss, at least
we need her, I think.
Yeah. Otherwise, I would have said, do it maybe in episode 8. Do it like a Game of Thrones first season.
So do you think someone's going to save her, though?
Where Sean Bean dies in episode 7, not in episode 4.
Yeah, I feel like, I feel like we have not seen the last of Helly yet. This is not even her final form, because she's such a driving force of momentum and change just from the raw energy of her pure, unadulterated hatred of Lumen, that it's causing a lot of antagonism. It's causing even the higher ups to sort of break in how to deal with someone that you can legally hold there, but literally will destroy their own hand and bleed out to get out,
And one thing I found fascinating in this episode too is, after Helly comes back from the break room, and she's being all irritated and this and that or whatever, Marcus is trying to say I'm just trying to make sure that you don't go back there. So that basically means and they're talking about the break room. How many times did you do it or whatever? So it's like Dylan has definitely been there. And Dylan gave a whole philosophy. It's he's like, pretend that you're sorry. And I like to think about some threesome thing. And I was like, it's a good philosophy or whatever. And that means that Mark's also been there.
I feel like they've all probably been there at some point.
So they've maybe have all kind of reacted like Helly, maybe not to the extreme, but they've all been there. They've all, had that punishment. So I thought that was really interesting. It's not just her, everybody goes through it, but apparently everybody kind of gets past it, where right now we're seeing, and that's what I'm saying. That's why Helly's such a fascinating character, and just I would rather see her maybe get past it, or how they have her get past it, rather than her die as we go into the half season, episode 5.
Well, I'm going to wait to see who saves Helly then. I have a feeling someone is going to save her, or maybe we saw her feet, but the cord doesn't work. I don't know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I want to say, for like the next episode, like more than just all this stuff is like, I think now that at their halfway point, I think they've hinted to it with the phone. The phone, like Petey leaving that phone and Audi Mark has left it alone or like whatever. I think as we get into episode 5, this next episode, my theory is that like that he was talking about will show up in Audi Mark's. I think that's what like we'll see maybe in episode 5 is Audi Mark and the they and the phone is going to be a major player besides what happens to Helly.
Any other predictions on your end?
I think that Annie and Audi Mark, it's going to be like a Goku Vegeta thing, like Dragon Ball Z. They're going to merge and become more powerful than before, in a more metaphorical way. But I do think that emotions are going to continue to kind of push them both towards the 50-50, And I think Irv and Burt have some type of lovely future together.
I was just going to say the same, where there's some curiosity happening there. And I definitely do think that we're going to start seeing Mark break down a little bit more. And again, it's just the point of, is it with the innie or the outie? Because that curiosity is peaking. We're seeing that he's not definitely, committed in one environment. We're starting to see that.
Absolutely. And then the one last thing that I predict is that I think that the powers that be, to the extent that they exist, really are going to increasingly put pressure on Harmony because she's losing control of that department.
And you see her, like, it was weird, like, seeing her with the Chinese finger
She's
cuffs.
scary.
So...
She's scary.
She's scary, and she's nervous. And cornered predators.
Even yeah. No, safe. And you bring up another good point that I just thought about, too, is that even Milchick was shocked when she brought the thing back. He's like, you did what? Even him, the guy that's HR and everything, even he was shocked by her, like, actions.
But I feel like she's that person that will, again, go above and beyond to make sure that she doesn't lose her job. She is in the most powerful position right now with all these characters, right? Absolutely. That seat that she holds. So she is going to make sure that she doesn't lose that. And she's like one of those women who will do anything, I think, to keep that power.
Yeah, I think that's actually what... not the power aspect of it, but I think that her and Helly are actually more similar than you think, because both of them are kind of like a trapped, animal in a cage, they're willing to gnaw off their own arm, or in Harmony's case, if someone else's arm needs gnawed off, they're willing to do anything to achieve their goals.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up our episode. We've had such a great time here. Again, do follow us on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, and comment, like, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you. So again, thank you for joining us, and make sure you tune in to episode 5 as we break it down all for you.